My name's Teresa Stewart. I am with American Century Investments. Anybody ever heard of us? We're down in Kansas City on the Country Club Plaza.
Helped build the thing.
Yes, I'll talk about that. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And I have been there 38 years next month. So I'm actually very proud to say that, because that's when I talk to the new trainees when they come in and we do a little overview for them and they're, 22, 23 years old. And I say, I've been here 37 years. And they'll look at me like, oh God, I don't want to be anywhere in 37 years, and they'll just kind of look at me like, that's forever, that's a long time. But I'm actually very proud of that, and I'm very blessed to have been able to stay with them for this long. So 38 years with them next month. I have a 34-year-old son, who'll be 35, who's married in Kansas City, and an 8-year-old granddaughter. And I have a 29-year-old daughter who lives in Denver, and she's getting married next year. And the reason I tell you that is that I have raised 2 kids. We made a lot of mistakes along the way. We did some things well, we did some things not so well. If I could go back and redo some of these things, if I knew this back then, I would have done some things differently. I think we're doing a little bit better job with our 8-year-old granddaughter, maybe, than what I did with my own kids. So if you don't mind, I might refer to some of my own personal experiences a little bit here and there, because I think at my age, I think they're kind of useful sometimes. So just as a quick guess, just to kind of ask and kind of gauge the group here, how many of you have kiddos under the age of 5 in your life? Could be kids, grandkids, whatever. Okay, good. A lot of young ones. How many between 5 and 8? Okay, and how many between, let's say they're in their teens? You got it. Okay, we've got some teens. Okay, all right. And then we've got a couple that may have any young adults.
20 to 30.
Okay, so young adults, yeah, and you've got it all spread out, don't you? You've got the whole gamut.
Yep.
All right, well, excellent. That kind of helps me. We're going to talk about all of that, actually. And I want to go ahead and start off by giving a little bit of, some statistics that kind of, why is this so important? I'm not sure what your reason is for being here, but this kind of helps as far as, we know that like 73%, I know this is kind of hard to see up front, 73% of the teens, they lack confidence about their own financial knowledge. And part of that is because they don't necessarily teach some of this in school. I was just telling this group over here that I do know that some of the high schools are now teaching a personal finance class, which is great because neither of my kids had that in high school. And my daughter went on to she's a physical therapist, so all of her courses in college were science. When she tested out of college algebra, that was the last math class she took. There were no business courses, there were no finance courses, and I assumed that she knew some of the things that we would find out that she didn't know, and she would say, Mom, where was I going to learn that? If you didn't tell me that, how was I supposed to know that? Now, at least they're teaching some of those things, I think, in the high school. Is it middle school? Well, good, because at least they're getting some basic understanding of finance. And that's really what we're talking about today is if they don't learn it from you, and they don't hear it from you, and they're going to hear about it maybe in school, but they're going to pick it up somewhere. So, you probably want them to learn and hear a lot about it from you, because your own personal values and the experiences that you had growing up help shape how you determine how you're going to spend your money. And so, that's important for you to share with them along the way. We know that starting early is important, and we know that kids who understand it usually grow in to be more successful as adults. Okay, that wasn't good. There we go. So when do you start talking about money with kids? When is it too early? Well, this is saying Jumpstart Coalition back in 2023 said really as early as 5 years old, easily you could start talking about money with kids. And you can look up here ages 3 to 5, they start looking at coins, maybe savings. They may have a piggy bank of some sort, so they get money on birthdays or what have you, and they put it away and they're saving for things. And at 6 to 10, they start talking about needs and wants. I would say you could start that even earlier, really, talking about needs and wants. So we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. 11 to 14, budgeting, banking basics. And boy, that world's changing. The banking world is definitely changing from when my kids were young. And then 15 to 18 credit, investing, and taxes. So we're going to really kind of talk about all that today in the next 40 minutes or 35 minutes, and I'm going to leave some time for questions at the end. We're going to talk about values and money. We're going to talk about how kids learn to earn. We're going to talk about budgeting and borrowing and mistakes to avoid. And then we're going to wrap up with just a minute or two on giving back. Does that sound okay? Okay, and feel free to ask questions along the way as well if you'd like. So this whole discussion about needs and wants, this is the one that I could go on forever. Needs and wants. This is something we start talking about as kids. I taught junior achievements. Has anybody ever done JA before? Okay. So I think it was in the first grade, we talked about needs and wants with kids. Is that right? I think it was first grade, and they had little flashcards, and they would have to put them into a category of, is this a need or is this a want? And so getting that thought process, and a lot of them you could tell had already been exposed to that, even by first grade. And some of them were very easy to, oh gosh, yes, that's a need. Or my winter coat, that's a need. I remember one that the kids got stuck on was a puppy. And the puppy was a tough one because some kids really felt like that was a need, and they could give me lots of reasons why it was really important. And I was like, some of those are really very valid reasons why having a puppy would be a good idea, and others were a want. But for the most part, it was pretty clear. And I would say this is something we have to continue to do as adults. I constantly have to continue to ask myself, do I really need that? Do I want that? It is too easy to spend money these days, I think. I have found, or maybe it's just me, but Amazon shows up at my door way too often, and it is just too easy to spend money. Debit cards are very easy to swipe. Online shopping is very simple. In 2 clicks, you can buy anything you want, and it's very easy to spend it and not really go through the thought process of, do I really need this? Especially, I already just bought some Christmas things. I don't even remember what I have from last year. So am I being a good role model? No, I'm not. I need to really rein that in just a little bit. But it's easy to do. It's too easy to do. And we are role models for our kids and for our grandkids. They do watch and see how we spend money and what we spend our money on. And my granddaughter has commented before, Mimi, you got another box from Amazon. And I'm like, maybe Mimi needs to really take a look at that, because she's noticing that it's too easy for me to be buying things on Amazon. I also take a lot of it back, but I do buy more than I need to. So talking about the needs and the wants, and one of the exercises that I thought was a really good one, and we did it, but it was an accident actually that we did it, but it came to buying a new car. We hadn't bought a new car, we'd always had used cars, and it was in 2012. We had to buy a new car. Our other car conked out. We had to make a decision pretty quickly. Ended up taking the kids with me to go look at them. And we did have a conversation, my husband and I, and the kids were right there as we were looking at the cars, about needs and wants. And I'm like, okay, well, we have a very limited amount of money. This was not something we had planned on buying. This was not in the budget. We're kind of backed in a corner right now, but we need something reliable, and we need something maybe covered by a warranty that we're not going to have to take in and get fixed all the time. And we need something that gets good gas mileage. And the kids were also looking at, ooh, the sunroof is really cool. And wouldn't it be, well, some of them have the little TV screens in the back, and that's really cool. And we talked about needs and wants. And we said, we really need this. It would be nice to have that. And we had a big discussion about, if we spend more money on this car than what we had intended, we may not be able to take a vacation or go to the beach or the ocean. I mean, we have to really talk about this and make decisions about the money we have to spend. And I didn't realize it at the time, but they walked away from that with some pretty good lessons. They brought it up when they bought their first cars, both used, but they still brought it up. I know that I really need this, but I really wanted this, but I just decided I was going to save the money, and I'll get that next time. So that's kind of an exercise. If you're in the market to have to buy a car at some point, even if it's used, new, whatever, talking about what we have to have and what it would be nice to have, but we don't have to have. And if we do that, it's going to hit our budget somewhere else. So I think it's important if you walk away from nothing else with this today, I think the main thing that to walk away with is that it's important just to have these conversations and to talk about it. Talk about money and finances with your kids. How specific you want to get. We didn't get into specifics about our budget, but we did say if we do this, we're going to have to make some adjustments over here, and it's going to affect the family. So, we have to really think about this. And involving them in that process, and involving them in we're going to talk about in a minute, even in the earning portion of this presentation. So this is just giving you an idea. Back in 2023, this is where teenagers like to spend their money. And I'm sure this has changed some since then. And in fact, one of the things that is not on here is that they found that restaurants, going and eating out, is what they would consider entertainment. And what do you think was the number one place where they wanted to eat? Chick-fil-A. It was number one. Now, I would wonder if Chipotle was up there somewhere, because I see a lot of teenagers in Chipotle. Yeah, but Chipotle, Chick-fil-A, they spend a lot of their money on that. That's their entertainment. And so along with these things, but I think the main thing that this really points out is that name brands, expensive brands, means something to teenagers. I remember when my daughter, we were getting leggings, and I would say, Costco has some awesome leggings. These leggings are awesome. And she's like, Costco? I want Lululemon. And I'm like, well, we can get 5 pair of the Costco for the 1 pair we could get at Lululemon. You decide which is it you want, but they're the same thing. They're not the same thing to a 14, 15-year-old, They're not the same. Really? See, I like my Costco leggings. I love my Costco leggings. I tell you, I go into Lululemon and is it that good?
Yes.
Really? Okay, I'm going to have to think about that, because I tell you, I go in there and I have sticker shock.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah, I kind of like quantity. I like having different colors.
Maybe Lillian, once your hair runs out, you can't trade it.
That's my daughter told me that. She got a hole in one of hers and she was able to take it back, and they exchanged it for a new pair. They won't do that for you at Costco. I think they will. She said, I don't know that they'll do that for you at Costco. But it's just, why do you think that so much of the marketing dollars is directed at the teenagers? Because they drive a lot of this. They drive it. And not only the teenagers, the 20-somethings, even us as adults, a lot of times these name brands mean a lot to us. So talking with our kids about the values of money, we really want to talk to them a little bit about, earning money. You could do some little chores around the house to earn some money at whatever age you're comfortable doing that. Right now, the number one thing that I remember growing up was raking leaves. Every time the leaves would come down, and my dad would say, you girls come out and help me rake leaves. If you hold the bag, and he did most of the raking when we were little, but if we held the bag and we didn't wander away and we stayed there until he was done and we did what he asked us to do, he'd give us some money for doing it. So it wasn't just hold the bag and then wander off and do something else. It was hold the bag until I'm done. And as we got older, we took on more of the raking itself. And so raking leaves, shoveling snow, cleaning house, whatever it is. We're going to talk about allowances here in just a second, but really talk to them about earning money and doing some little small jobs. Using, especially for the little kids, clear jars, mason jars is a great idea. Anything clear, because they love to see that. They love to see it get bigger and bigger and taller. And seeing the paper bills in there, that's a really cool thing when they see paper bills in there. So something like that is good for the younger kids. They have apps. How many of you have heard of Greenlight? Apparently that's a really good app. There's lots of apps out there for younger kids and budgeting.
Greenlight, there used to be a lot of ways to get the Greenlight app free of charge.
Yes.
Like through Chase. A lot of that's ending.
Oh.
Crew now has one that's free of charge.
CREW?
CREW.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. So write that down if you want. Crew, CREW. Things change so quickly in the online and the apps world. And then even talking with them a little bit about trade-offs, like the leggings. We can get 5 leggings or we can get 1 pair of leggings, or we could go ahead and get this today, but then we're not, if you really want that today, we can do it, but then there may be something else that comes along that you may want, we may not be able to get it. All of these are just conversations that you may not be thinking much about as you're having them, but they really do have a profound impact on our kids. They're listening, they're watching, and it really is a lot more than what you realize. They take a lot more away from it than what you realize. As far as, having smart spending habits, talking about price comparison, again, that needs and wants, I have a little story to share. It's a very proud Mimi moment. I took my granddaughter grocery shopping last weekend. We were picking up some things. The church is gathering sack items for Thanksgiving meals. So she was helping me pick out 2 cans of green beans, 2 cans of cranberries, all this. And we got to the yams, and I said, oh my gosh, look at this. The yams have gone way up. I don't remember paying that much for yams last year. And she said, Mimi, look over here. They have a store brand. And she said, store brands are way cheaper than the name brands. She was telling me something that I didn't know. And I said, oh my gosh, you're right. She goes, yeah, you always want to get the store brand. They taste the same. I was so proud of her. I don't know if she's gathered that from when I've taken her shopping or her mom and dad is taking her shopping, but she's 8 years old and she already pointed that out to me. I was just so proud. So, that price comparison can start at any time. And again, they're picking that stuff up. Have them track their money. If they have the jars, have them, when you take it and count it out every now and then, write it down so you don't have to start all over at certain times, but keeping track of how much money is in there. Or again, you can use apps, a journal or an app or something. And then introducing that 24-hour rule. This is a good one for me. This is what I've started doing for me with my Amazon. And that is, my granddaughter wanted a new skateboard. She's getting into skateboard. She's like, Mimi, I want a new skateboard. And I said, well, you have a skateboard. Well, I know, but I want this one. Somebody at school has one and she really wanted this one and I have enough money for it. And so we looked, I said, yeah, it looks like you have enough money for it. But let me ask you this. Why don't we wait till tomorrow? And if you still want it tomorrow, then we were at Walmart. If you still want it tomorrow, we'll come back to Walmart and we'll get it for you. And I've started doing that with my Amazon cart. I put stuff in the cart and I don't get it. I just put it, I park it, I think about it, and I tell you, I bet at least half the time I go back and look at it and I decide I don't really want it. At least half the time. And that's way better than getting it and I turn around, I feel bad, and I take it back and return it. So it's really, the 24-hour rule is not just for kids, it's for all of us as we're thinking about how we're spending our money. Something that seems really important right now, tomorrow, next week may not seem so important. So talking with them about that. This is all from the Psychology of Money from 2023. Okay, so we've talked about the value of money. We've talked about wants and needs. Let's talk about learning to earn. So 59% of adults, of their kids, want their kids to understand the importance of working to earn money, and 35% of them want to teach their kids about money. I think, honestly, it's probably a little bit higher than that, I would think. But this is all talking about, you go to a job, if you go to work every day, talking to your kids about, I go to work and I go to a job, and you know why? Because that's how we pay for our house, and that's how we pay for our car, and that's how we pay for our utilities. You always had to get on to my kids about the water. I swore I'd never do that when my mom and dad would yell at me about, using too much water. And I was like, I swear, when I'm a mom, I'm not going to do that. But I did, because I'm paying the water bill now. And so, I would get on my kids and sometimes my granddaughter about that, because you know what? Mimi goes to work every day and we work really hard for our money and I have to make it go a long ways, and you're just wasting water and I can't pay for that. And she was really shocked that we had to pay for water. She had no idea that that was something that we had to pay for. So, even talking about that is important with your kids. So let's look here. I want to look at a couple of these statistics. We're going to talk for just a minute about allowance. That's kind of a touchy subject because people have very different feelings about allowance. 59%, as I said, want their kids to understand the importance. 35% want to teach them how to manage money. This average allowance figure of $19.39 a week, does that surprise any of you? Yeah. You think it's too high or too low? You think it's high? I thought so too. But actually, this is coming from, I thought this was from, Investopedia. The mean allowance this was in 2023, December, was $19.39 a week. 35% of their parents that they surveyed pay between $11 and $20, but they said the average is $19.39 a week. I thought that was high, but well, and there you go.
It depends on what they're expecting them to pay.
Exactly. But it also comes kind of back to a family decision. I mean, everybody has a different view on allowance. How much should it be? What should they have to do to earn it? And about 79% of the parents said we do pay an allowance. There's really about 3 schools of thought. And people land in different places, kind of depending on how you grew up, whether you earned an allowance when you were growing up or not. And one of them is you're going to go ahead and do the certain chores in the house that we ask you to do, and you're going to get your good grades just simply because it's the right thing to do. It's the expectation. We're a family. Everybody pitches in. You're not getting paid any extra for doing it. That's what you're expected to do. Now, they may give a certain set amount of spending money, or maybe they don't call it allowance, but they may give some spending money to them a week, but it's not tied to the chore or to what it is or the outcome of what they're doing. That's one. Another one would be, here's a chore chart or a list of chores, and here's the things that you do. And if you do these and you do them well, then you'll get a certain amount of allowance. Again, kind of based on their age and that type of thing. And in that school of thought, I would say it's really, really important to be very clear about what the expectation is and what the quality of the work is, when that work is supposed to be done. So if I tell you that you have to empty the dishwasher before you go to bed tonight, everything needs to be put away and anything in the sink needs to be loaded. And I come in later after you've gone to bed and you unloaded it, but the stuff is still in the sink. Well, you didn't meet the expectation. So I need to, think about how I'm going to, pay you for that, because that kind of mimics the real world. When they get out and they get their first job and they're working, a lot of us are paid based on the quality of the work we do, if we've met the expectations, and if we did it on time, right? So that's another school of thought. There's no right or wrong. There's no, I know people who do it both ways. And then the third way is some families just kind of come up with their own system. They have their own way of doing it and they come up with their own system. I don't think it really matters what you do, whether you do it or not, but I think what does matter is consistency. Whatever one you're going to do, you need to be consistent. And you need to make sure that if you're asking them to do something and they're not doing it, that they're not, really getting paid for it if that is the agreement that you've made with them. And if you say you're going to pay them on Saturdays, you pay them on Saturdays, even if that means you got to go to the bank and get some cash because you don't have any cash sitting around. But if they're holding up their end of the deal, we're holding up our end of the deal, right? So that's really what I would say about allowances. It is a great way for kids to make money and earn some money if you want to do it that way. But just whatever you decide to do, I think mom and dad need to be on the same page, and it needs to be consistent for the most part. That's what most people would say. Any questions about that? And by the way, I should have mentioned this. This book that's in your bags, Raising Financially Aware Kids, all of this is in here. A lot of this, we're following this. A lot of it's coming right out of the book. So it's a pretty easy read. It's a really fun book. And so take a look at that when you get time. So we've talked a little bit about, the fixed allowance, the earning their allowance, what have you. Has anybody heard of the 50-30-20 rule? What is the 50-30-20? You might want to share. 50% goes. Yeah, it's right up there. 50% of it's for spending, 30% for saving, 20% for giving. So for the smaller kids, what's really fun to do is let them decorate those jars, those mason jars, and label them. Here's my spending money, here's my saving money, here's my giving money. And again, it's a good visual. So they come up with something that they really want, new skateboard, new whatever. They come up with that and you say, well, let's go look at your spending jar. Let's see if you've got enough. Oh goodness, it looks like you do have enough in that jar, but if we use it, it's going to take all of it. It's going to take some time to rebuild that jar again. Are you sure? Is this really that important? Do you want it? Do you need it? Do you, how important is it to you? Do you want to take 24 hours and think about it? What do you want to do? So basically, to summarize this, also talk to your kids about your job. Like we said, I go off to work every day. I earn a living so we can pay for things. We have a family budget. We have to stay within that so that we can have all the things that we need and want. Encourage them as they get to the age to get a part-time job. I'll share a personal story about that. So my daughter, who's the youngest, I made a lot of mistakes with the oldest. and I'm an oldest. How many of you are oldest children? We're kind of the experiment kids, you know? So I made a lot of mistakes with my oldest one that I wish I did a little bit better job second time around. But my daughter, the youngest one, she got a job at 14. One of her friends' dad owned a frozen custard company. So she could go there and work, and her friends worked there, and a lot of the friends would come in after soccer games or whatever, and they would get frozen custard. So it was fun. You know, she was mainly doing it because it was fun, and it was where to see everybody. But she did make a little bit of money. What she really learned, more than what I expected her to learn, was Jeff, who owned the custard shop, did a really good job of letting these kids really run it. And so she learned at a very young age, younger than I ever did, how to manage her time. So if I want to be out of here at 9 o'clock and I start picking everything up a little bit too early, then some late customers come in, I have to get it back out again, then I got to pick it up again. Or if I wait too long to start, I'm not going to get out of here till 10 o'clock or whatever, you know, her managing her time. Also, problem solving. A lot of times, you know, he would say, I don't know, what do you think? They'd go, hey, you know, this is an issue or whatever. Hey, we're running out of whatever. And sometimes if it was the type of thing he could do, she would come home and say, Jeff would ask us what we thought we should do. And she thought that was really cool. But really, he was teaching them at a really young age how to problem solve. And so she took away from that. She had a lot of fun. But she took away from that a lot of skills that I didn't even anticipate that she would. Older son, he played baseball. He'd play with a traveling baseball team. So I went along with it when he said, Mom, I can't have a job. I got to play baseball. I was like, okay, that's probably true. So I never really made him work. So I will tell you that to today's date at 30, almost 35 and 29, who do you think has the best skills at managing money? Daughter, by far. Son has a little bit of an entitlement attitude, may I say. So I don't know how much of it goes back to that, but it does make you wonder. I mean, he never had to really have a job till he graduated from high school. And she had one at 14. She learned how to manage money. He still doesn't really know how to manage money. Part of that's on us. We didn't do the kind of job that we should have done at talking about it because he was the oldest. So we're still trying to teach him at 34 years old how to manage money and lessons that I wish, as I said, if I could go back and do it all over again, we would have had these conversations way, way earlier. Praise them for their hard work. It's not just all about the money, but it's the effort that they put into it. They're not going to do things perfectly. They're not going to unload the dishwasher maybe the way that you would. They're not going to do things the way that you would, but praise them for their effort, especially if they met the deadline and they did what they were told to do. It's not all about the money. And then have them keep track of their work for resumes as they get older. You know, that job at the custard shop went on her resume, and she was able to talk about that when she went out to get a job in college. So don't forget about those things. They may not seem like a big deal at the time, but they can be. Yes?
What age do you teach kids how much money like when they're gonna have a part-time job, like?
You know, boy, I don't know. The question is, how do you teach them what their time is worth? I mean, a lot of it, there's minimum wage. I know in Missouri, it's different than it is in Kansas. It's higher in Missouri than it is in Kansas. The value of your time, is it like, so if she went or somebody went and applied for a job and it's like, that's only going to pay you this amount. I remember we had conversations about that the year after she did the custard shop because nannying actually paid quite a bit of money. And I would say, you know, you may want to think about that. You could go back to the custard shop. You're not going to make as much, but nannying makes more money. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Yes.
So I founded an organization called the Society of Child Entrepreneurs. And so we teach financial literacy, leadership, entrepreneurship to kids starting at 6.
At 6?
And I really starting at 6 years old, it's stuff like, okay, this is the cost of what it takes to make. This is the cost of your time to make it. So based on the materials and the time, this is how we need to price our product. So then we're looking at how do we price materials. That means then they're already calculating okay, my time to make a product costs this much money. So when then they go to get a job, they say, I can make this much money in this much time running my own business. So honestly, I tell people if your kid can add and subtract within 20, they can start a business and start earning money because they know how to have that change. And so really, as soon as they're little, they can start calculating that thing with guidance, and then as they get older, they need less guidance.
What's the name of that organization again?
The Society of Child Entrepreneurs.
The Society of Child Entrepreneurs.
I got a sticker out for you, but I have more stickers.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, I did not know that. I did not know that. That's very interesting. That's a good lesson. I like that. Thank you. Well, we're going to run into budgeting and, oh, I did it again. There we go. Budgeting and savings. So once they've earned their money, right, they know how to spend it. We've talked about that. Then how about budgeting it? Giving them the responsibility. When they're young, they can even budget, learning how to budget like with their lunch money. So we do tell my granddaughter, you can buy your lunch 2 days a week. It's gotten a little expensive to buy their school lunches now than it used to be. So we've said you can buy your lunch 2 days a week. You pick the 2 days, but the other 3 days you're going to have to take. So, or maybe with their clothes, I'm going to spend $200 on your back to school clothes. If we go over that, you may have to buy, if there's something in here that you really, really want, you may have to come up with the money. I took her to Old Navy. They had 50% off everything sale, and we got a bunch of things for her back to school. But I did say, Mimi's got a certain amount. We're going to keep it to this amount. And when we got to the end and we were adding it up, we had gone a little bit over. So I said, you're going to have to put something back. And we have to make a decision, and she went through, and so she ended up putting a sweater back that I doubt she would have ever worn anyway. So, we stuck to that budget. I said, that's how much I can spend, and that's it. We're not going to go over that. So teaching them and talking with them about that. Now, when it comes to the older kids, when it comes to that time, I don't know if any of you with the teenagers are getting close to the time where they're going to buy their first car, if it's going to be a used car or whatever, or however you decide to do it. Don't forget, and this is something a lot of parents we overlook, it's not just we get so focused on the price of the car, and we talk about the price of the car. Are we going to split it? Who's paying for it? How are we doing it? Am I paying for it and you're going to make payments to me? Or what are we going to do? We forget sometimes to factor in and talk about who's paying for the gas, who's paying for the property tax every year, who's paying for the car insurance, who's paying to get the oil changed, and any other maintenance that needs to come up. And it's really good and important to have that conversation up front instead of waiting until it happens. And then they're saying, well, I didn't know I was supposed to pay for that. I thought you were paying for that. So really having those conversations about it's the whole picture. It's not just the car. When we buy a car, there's a lot more that comes to it. It's not just the car. So keeping that in mind when that time comes. This is just talking a little bit about when you have kids that are old enough, kind of writing that budget down. I know they have apps, and apps are great. Sometimes it's good to just write it down, take pen to paper, and really kind of look at, okay, here's what you're going to put. If you go with that 50-30-20 rule, if you follow that, here's what you end up with. You've got $269 a month to spend. Here's your discretionary expenses. We kind of talked about it. You said you want to get coffee maybe 4 times a week. Okay, $5 isn't going to cut it anymore, probably. But you want to get coffee 4 times a week, and you want to eat out. Maybe you spend $20 a week. And if you follow that right there, you're going to have $34 left over. So that's going to be your kind of cushion right there. It's the visual. It's having it written down. I think it's good for adults to do that too. Sometimes I like to put pen to paper more than I like, or an Excel spreadsheet more than an app. That may just be me because I'm old school. But I think that's a good idea for kids as they get used to and start thinking about budgeting. As far as budgeting and savings, the final word about this really is let's make it fun. We talked about those jars, label those jars, save, spend, give some of that decision-making power to them on how they want to use that, and talking with them about how they're going to earn that. Set a goal. Do they have a wish list? What are they saving for? Is there something specific that they really, really want? Maybe a short-term goal, maybe a long-term goal. Looking at that and watching it grow, and then sweeten the deal is, you know what? I know you really want a scooter. That seems to be the big thing now for the middle school kids. You want a scooter. Okay, I have no idea what those things run, but let's just say that I'm going to put half. If you can come up with $300, I'll match it and put the other $300 with it to get it. It's a big item. There's no way they're going to come up with $600. It's going to take them a long time to come up with that. So maybe some sort of a bigger item. If you reach this goal, I'll sweeten the deal and I'll pay the rest of it. Whatever that is, however you decide to do it. It gives them some incentive and it doesn't seem so overwhelming to them. All right, banking, that's changed a lot. The banking industry, I don't think my two kids have stepped foot in a brick and mortar bank, maybe ever. So it's kind of changed, but really there's still we still need banks, I guess. So when they have their money that are in the jars, there comes a certain point in time when it's like, let's go ahead and transition it from the jars and let's take it to a bank and open up a little savings account for you. So whenever that time is, whatever age that is, whatever amount of money it is, when it gets to that point, you go to the bank and you open up a little savings account for them. And there again, we've got this Go Henry. That's another one. If anybody's heard of that, that's another app I've heard. Is that?
It's now called Acorns Early.
Oh my gosh. We're going to have to update the whole deck. Acorns Early. And is it more for younger kids, is my understanding. Okay. So that's another idea. I keep doing that. But so this back here, when we wrote this 2 years ago, it was about taking your kids and having them tour the bank. I don't know that anybody's going to really do that much anymore. Those days are kind of going by the wayside, but they still need to understand money goes into a bank, and that's called a deposit. Money comes out of a bank, and that's called a withdrawal. And another idea is if we take that money in your piggy bank, we have enough money now that we could go and make a deposit at the bank, and there's something called interest. And you know what that is? That means the bank will give us a little bit more money on top of the money that you have. So that's better than it sitting in that jar in your room, perhaps, you know. We have to look at things as they get older. We have to look at things like minimum. What's the minimum that you have to open up this bank account? Making decisions for them if they're going to go away to college. Where do we want the bank to be that we may have to transfer money to and from them? So, you know, keeping those things in mind, and making sure that they realize that even though the money may be at the bank, it may not be available to them for a few days. There may be a waiting period before they can actually touch that money. And obviously talking about if you have a debit card, make sure there's money in the account before you go and use your debit card. And there's fees. Sometimes if you do things that you shouldn't do, they're going to charge you a fee for that. So those are still banking basics, even though we're really not touring the bank as much. They're still important things because, again, if they don't learn it from you, where are they going to know? Where are they going to learn that? They're going to learn it by making the mistake and getting hit with the fees and all. So it's better really for you to talk with them about it. As far as investing, really just talking about the stock market game, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that. A lot of high schools, they'll play this. But really, you can do this at home, and that's just teaching them about the concept of investing. And that can be as simple as pick a stock. Tesla would be fun to watch, whatever. Pick a stock and watch and see what it does. Watch it go up, watch it go down. And there's a lot of movement these days in the stock market. It's not like it used to be where they were just kind of inch along. It moves quite a bit. But it's teaching them the concept of risk and reward. If you buy a stock, how much risk are you taking? And we're not really maybe buying the stock, we're pretending. But if we had bought the stock, and how much risk were you willing to take and how much return are you maybe going to get? If you don't want to take a lot of risk, you're not going to probably get a lot of return. But just that concept. I know, I think Junior Achievement maybe even talks about that when they get older. They do touch on that as well. There's your risk and return. Now I'm going to talk for just a second about 529s. Anybody heard of them? The number one worry from most adults today is when it comes to savings is saving enough for retirement is usually number one. What do you think number two is? Sending their kid to college, whatever that looks like. It may be trade school, apprenticeship, it could be 4-year, 2-year, what have you. But the most 70% of parents with college-bound children worry about, do I have enough money to get them through school? And I would tell you that most of the families that I work with, their intention is not to save enough to get them through all 4 years of college debt-free. It would be wonderful, but a lot of times that just isn't possible. Sometimes they're gonna have to take out a loan. And as you have probably read before, Americans hold over $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, and I've heard that's actually gone up. So mainly because a lot of these have defaulted on their loans since COVID. And 68% of students borrow because it's a reality. How much they borrow is going to depend on how much has been saved and put aside for them to use for college. And then maybe they're going to work through school as well. But it is a number one concern. And so I'm going to just talk for a second about, I don't have a slide for that, 529s. 529 plans are a great vehicle that you can use to save for college. A lot of them have a zero minimum. You get some great tax benefits. So it's kind of like you use an IRA for retirement, You can use a 529 for college savings. And I'll stick around after this for any questions about that as well. We're going to finish up here in just a second. There's a couple statistics here. Basically, fewer than half the kids today feel like they're ever going to be financially independent from their parents. That's kind of sad, don't you think? They're worried. And a lot of them go away and they come back. And they come back maybe 2 or 3 times because they can't afford to live out on their own a lot of times. It's really expensive to live out on their own these days. And so 59% of the parents say that they've had to help their kids. I've had to help both of my adult kids at times because it's been difficult for them. You know, that's again another personal family decision, whatever you want to do. But the reality is, and you know this, things are really, really expensive and it's really tough for young people to make it, to buy a house, to pay rent, all of those things. I'm going to have to skip through a lot of these. Let's just talk for a second about giving back. The last topic. This is a decision that people make on their own. This is the time of year you hear about it a lot right now, about giving back. Families, whatever's important to you is we just encourage you to talk about it. At American Century, it's really in our DNA. I think you had mentioned American Century. We own the Stowers Institute for Medical Research, if you've ever heard of that, down in Prairie Village, Kansas City, Missouri. 40% of our profits are set up to go directly to the Stowers Institute for Research. It was set up that way by Mr. and Mrs. Stowers before they passed away. They were the owners and founders of American Century. And so to date, we've given over $2 trillion to the Stowers Institute for Medical Research. $2 billion for medical research. And they're researching things like cures for Alzheimer's, cures for Parkinson's, cures for cancer. So that's really in our DNA. It's something that as a company we believe in, and it's something as a family. We do something like that every year. I'm going to finish with another little story. My daughter, when she was in 5th grade, the thing that was important to her were dogs, puppies and dogs, animals. And there was a place not too far from our home where they would keep animals until they could be adopted out. What do you call that? No, it wasn't Wayside Ways, but it was something like that. And they would keep the dogs, and she would go, and her best friend would go down there, and they would let them play with the puppies and walk them and do things like that. And they decided they wanted to do something to make some money for this place. And so they made these little earrings. It was when beading was really a big deal. And they decided all on their own that they were going to make these little earrings, and we named it Lobes of Love. How cute is that? Lobes of Love. And they made all these earrings. We had our friends and family come over and they sold them, and they turned around, they gave all that money to that little dog shelter. That's the word I was looking for. That was one of the proudest moment I think she's ever had, and she talks about it to this day. And she was in 5th grade. And she says, remember, Mom, when we made those earrings, we took that money down there and we gave it to them? They felt so much pride in that. It was their idea. It's just the idea of giving back. Whatever it is that's important to you, that bucket that says spending, saving, you've got one that says give. Whatever it is that your family believes in, it's your values, is important to you. Teaching that at a young age is important. I hope some of these were nuggets of information. I know a lot of it's common sense. You already know a lot of it, but I hope there was a little bit in there that you could take away and go, that maybe is an idea, or maybe I want to try that. I hope so. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you have a really wonderful rest of your day with Women and Money. Thank you.